I think science does have things to say, but I think that it's important to recognize that science, by its very approach to knowledge, is extremely limited in what it can say about miracle, about special divine action. Because science is focused on the normal workings of the world. That's what Robert Boyle says we should mean when we talk about nature, that it should be the normal course of the world. But of course, as soon as we say special divine action, we're not talking about the normal course of the world, we're talking about the abnormal course of the world. And so if science is the description of how the world usually works, okay, which is what I think it is, then it's necessarily limited in what it can say about special divine action. What it can say, I think sometimes, is we don't have an explanation within the normal course of events for a particular phenomenon. So if someone experiences an unusual remission of cancer in response to prayer, for example, which is a commonplace actually, science might be tempted, or a religious scientist might be tempted to see that as a miracle and might actually rightly interpret it as a miracle. But that scientist, quasi-scientist, I think is in a position only to be able to say, we don't understand how this happened. It's not the normal course of the world, okay? And so I think that's the way in which I think science can address this question. Now, on the other hand, I think that there are certain, let's say, commitments that a certain approach to science sometimes takes. And so it's true that science tries its darndest to explain all phenomena in natural terms, and that's what we should be doing as scientists. But sometimes that principle is elevated to a kind of metaphysical level, and it's asserted that there can be no events that go beyond the normal course, the so-called laws of nature as we know them. And I think that then if you elevate that principle of science trying to explain things in terms of the laws of nature, if you elevate that into a metaphysical principle, then naturally enough, you rule out the possibility of special divine action. But I think that it's important to recognize that you don't have to, as a scientist, you don't have to elevate that principle of our epistemology into an ontological principle, into an assertion that there can be no violations, so-called, of the laws of nature. So I think I think science has value in trying to examine extraordinary phenomena and understand the extent to which they have or have not natural explanations, but also a better understanding of science that recognizes a more modest approach to what science is, that science is a particular type of knowledge that aims at understanding the normal, saves you from an unjustified extrapolation of the results of science into a presumption of closure of the universe. So I personally have no problem believing that God acts in the world, that miracles happen, that providence is present, and so forth. This is not, in my view, in the least contradictory to my equally strong commitment to trying to understand the world of nature on its own terms.